For me, sometimes I can be around a million people and still feel completely alone. Not so long ago, I was so empty and confused and I had everything. I have my 6 grandchildren, had my wife, had my kids, had the farm, got everything I wanted and needed. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, why do I want to do this?
Before we begin, just a heads up that today's episode includes discussions of sensitive topics like sexual assault and suicide. If you choose to proceed, please take care. And if you need any support, there are resources in our show notes. Your well-being is important, so please feel free to pause or skip any parts if needed. Don't Be Caught Dead, the show bringing stories of death back to life. Here's your host, Catherine Ashton.
Today we have Bill Edgar. Bill has been many things in his life: son of one of Australia's most notorious gangsters, homeless street kid, maximum security prisoner, hard man, family man, car thief, professional punching bag, philosopher, inventor, victim of horrific childhood sexual abuse, and an activist fighting to bring down the institutions that let that happen. He's also been described as a successful businessman, counsellor, author, and one of Australia's leading private detectives. However, he has become infamous for being the Coffin Confessor. Thanks for being with us today, Bill.
Oh, thank you for having me, and hi to all your listeners.
Now, I actually think that's probably the longest list of occupations I've ever read off for anyone of my guests. And what has been your favourite role out of all of those to date?
I'd have to be the latest as the Coffin Confessor. I mean, the PI work's good, but the Coffin Confessor would have to be the ultimate role for me. I think I was born to do it.
And what does that involve?
Well, it's basically rocking up to a funeral, crashing it, and exposing the love that my client had for all those that were there, or the hate that they had for them, and telling those to fuck off, basically.
And how did this get started? Like, did you start off a PI and then move into this role? How is that progression?
So I was working in the role of a PI. I was investigating finances for a client. The client was on his deathbed. We got to talking about life, death, and the afterlife and everything in between, as you do. And, it was a joke. I just told him straight out as a joke. I said, look, I could always crash your funeral for you. And he took me up on the offer. I didn't think he was. Yeah, I thought he was going to do his own eulogy, but he did say that, a lot of people that he's been to funerals and the eulogy's not played. The family view it first and out of disrespect, or they just feel it's too confronting, so they don't play it. So he wanted something more, and he got it.
And tell me, the other roles that we've mentioned, philosopher, inventor, activist. Let's go philosopher. Tell me a bit about that one.
That came about just because of, I suppose, my life, my upbringing. Whenever I speak at events or one-on-one with people, I will tend to have antidotes or abilities to help people cross the line or overcome certain things. And I really don't know. That was something that Penguin Random House Australia put in and said, look, this guy is such a philosopher. He's such a great speaker and the things he says, and he's probably lived 5 lives, and it was quite, for me, it was like, I never realized myself that I was a philosopher or anything like that, to be honest with you. I really didn't until I really looked into it, and I thought, yeah, okay, I am, yeah.
Well, having read both of your books, I can tell that you have a very unique outlook on life, obviously based on your own personal experience. But what really strikes me when I read your books and when I've heard you speak is your real strong moral code that you have. Like, there is things you will do and that you will not do. Can you talk us through that sort of, I suppose, morals that you have in relation to your role?
Yeah, I think I've always held my integrity at the highest level. I won't sell myself short. I won't sell myself out, and I won't sell my soul. And it's just something I've always done. I've always sort of been that type of person that, if I've stood up for myself, which I've done my whole life, but stood up for other people, it's got to be for the right reason. It's got to be for, the fight. I love the fight. I love standing up for people that haven't got a voice or can't stand up. I love empowering people, but it's got to be for the right reason. And I have a code and an ethics and it's a morality that I just need to have. I think it's just in me. It's nothing I've learnt or been told to do. It's just something I've always thought to do the right thing. I mean, my wife has always said that my whole life. She said, never do anything wrong, Bill. The world's so small. And I'd say, yeah, okay, dear, and don't lie, because you have to remember a lie, and it's terrible if you forget that lie, yes, dear, so, and we brought each other up. I mean, we were 15 when we met, so, that's 40 odd years now. So, it's just something that has always stuck by me, and I've always taught my children, don't lie, cheat, or steal. They're the three things, and I guess I did those things when I was younger, and I hated myself for it. So I guess, that's got a lot to do with it.
And when you have spoken about what you will accept and what you won't accept, some of the things that come to my mind are you will only be engaged for your services by the deceased, no one else with an ulterior motive. What are some of the other things that you won't accept?
Well, yeah, that's probably the main one, is I'll only interrupt a funeral service on behalf of the deceased or those that engage me before they pass. And there's two reasons for that. One is that I can investigate their claims a lot easier. So if someone comes to me on their deathbed, or even prior to, they're not even going to die, and they say, look, my wife's been screwing around with a neighbour and I want her outed at my funeral. And I'll be saying, well, look, that's your wife. How about we talk about you and what you did? Leave that to her to expose herself. And if she doesn't, then she takes that to the grave. But let's hear about you. So if your wife's been screwing around behind your back, how did you feel? What did it, instead of outing her and the neighbour, I want to hear your story. And then it sort of evolves into what they've actually got, which is a really cool thing, because I'm not talking yet about a third party. I'm talking about them, and whilst coffin crashing can sort of tend to, be a revenge thing as well, because some people will go, hey, listen, for instance, like the first one I ever did, crashing Graham's funeral. He said, look, my best mate's doing the eulogy. Tell him to sit down, shut up, or fuck off. He's been trying to screw my wife. At first, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to out a guy in front of a heap of people. I need proof. I need something to actually substantiate what I'm being told. And when Graham allowed me to put cameras in his home, within 24 hours, I had all the proof. So I was able to stand there and tell this bloke to fuck off. Seriously, you've hurt this family. You weren't a friend. You can go. Half the crowd already knew this guy was a mongrel. So it was good in that respect. So, whereas if I was to work for somebody that says, oh, excuse me, can you crash my mother's funeral? People need to be told this, and this. I can't do that because it's a third party. I need to speak to your mother. I'd have to have her engage me. I don't want to go off hearsay. I've always said this, the truth, I walk a very fine line. It's just one of those things. I can't be engaged by a third party.
And you seem to be, and it may be your private investigator hat that has helped you with this, but you seem to be very clear in relation to that fine line when you walk. I recall in the book that story about where the person wanted something retrieved, I think from underneath their fridge in their house, and you walked in there and the house wasn't empty.
No, that's right. I mean, obviously, I understand that it's the relatives and that the people there, are there at the house, but they shouldn't have been there. I was the only one that was allowed to go to that home. I had the keys, I had all the entry notes, I had a video from the actual owner of the home, I had the location of the items that had to be retrieved. And yet when I get there, there's family members rummaging through this person's life and trying to find things that they knew he had, but they couldn't find. And it was a sad moment. Yet one of them tells me, they're going to call the police, and I'm happy for them to call the police. I mean, I've got proof. I haven't done a break-in. I'm not stealing. I'm actually retrieving something on behalf of the owner of that property. So, yeah, it can be confronting in that way. And I find that's sort of what empowers me more. The vultures in the family give me the ability to do what I do.
Because in this particular instance, that man was still alive at that point, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, you know what? He was alive, and the lady I sat with in the hospice ward was alive when her son came in and tried to take the rings off her finger while she's still in the bed. I mean, it was tragic. It was heartbreaking, and obviously he didn't get far. But the point was, how many times does this happen? I mean, it's just incredible.
And it's a topic that you obviously quite a lot of, but in society, we're only really probably since the Aged Care Commission and COVID, we've really had a light shine on aged care facilities and
Mm.
also elder abuse.
Yeah, I mean, elder abuse is the most horrific and hidden. It was so hidden. I mean, it's only coming out now, really, what goes on. I met a lady who runs an aged care system that said that she arrived at work one day. There was an elderly gentleman sitting out the front, and his son had just dropped him off there. He wasn't booked in. He wasn't nowhere else to go. His son just said, "Look, Dad, I've had enough. You can't live with it anymore," and just dropped him off at a nursing home.
That's horrific.
It's terrible what goes on. Absolutely horrific. And, when I started looking into the aged care systems and what goes on, the people that work there, most part, are beautiful, caring people, but they're struggling. They have their own struggles. These people go home and they might have arguments with their partners, or, they've got other troubles that they've got to deal with. Yet they're coming in, they're putting all their effort into caring for these elderly people that are being neglected and abused by family members. Or family members are coming to the centres and saying, "Oh, we want to see Uncle Joe." And they go, "Well, we don't even know you. We haven't seen you in 4 years. And Uncle Joe's been lying here for 4 years. So why do you want to come and see him now?" And they go, "Oh, well, that's none of your business. He's our uncle. We're going to see him." And they'll go in and they'll manipulate him and get him to sign things and move him from that care centre to another one. And it's all for them, not for him. So, yeah, it's horrid.
And when you released your first book, how long had you been practicing as the Coffin Confessor?
Oh, 2 years. But then we had COVID for 2 years. So there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot going on there. So, yeah, 2018 was the first crash. I think Penguin came to me in 2020. COVID was just on the verge. And so I started writing the first book then. And, yeah, it was just crashing, really. There wasn't a lot going on, and then COVID, like I say, 2 years. There's so many people that were intrigued about death during COVID and were fearful, and everybody was worried. Yet I was sitting here getting thousands of emails, and it was touching to be able to talk to all these people as well.
And so to talk me through that time, what were sort of people reaching out to you during that period?
Well, the Coffin Confessor sort of became a global phenomenon instantly. It was ridiculous how quick it took off. And I was getting emails for requests from people that were not even close to death. They were just thinking about what they needed to put in place. And I'd write back to them and say, "Well, these are my thoughts of what you should do. Not just have a funeral plan," because some people would reach out and say, "Yeah, I paid money for a funeral plan." And I say, "Yeah, but, you plan what you're going to do on the weekend and you go and do that on the weekend. Have you told your wife how much you love her, or your husband how much you love them, or what they want every day? Because you may not come home that night." And they're like, "Oh, no." And then I'll say to them, "What's at home you don't want your family and friends to find?" And they go, "Oh, nothing." And then they go, "Oh, shit. Yeah, there is a few things I don't want them to find." I say, "Well, while you're at work, you could pass away and someone's going to go through your shit." And they all of a sudden, they'd interact and we'd go back and forth. And then, so it's a multitude of people either thinking about what they wanted or telling me stories about what they should have done at their family's funerals, loved ones' funerals, by getting up and saying a few things, because a lot of people said funerals are for the living, not for the deceased. And I've always disagreed with that. I believe that it's for the deceased. You're there to celebrate the deceased, so let them have a say. And if it's through me, it's still their say. I'm just the messenger.
And tell me, what are some of those things that people wish they'd said?
Well, a lot of times I'd get emails from people saying, "Look, I'd be sitting there as one of the mourners and I'd be hearing the eulogies and I'd be thinking, well, my grandfather wasn't like that. He was a prick. You know, he wasn't all lovey-dovey and nice. He was a hard man. He was a prick of a man." And most of us know that. And I wish I had stood up and said, excuse me, that's, let's get all the fluffy stuff out of the way. That's crap. Let's talk about the real person. And that was the majority of the emails I received, is what people wish they had said about the true person, and not just out of respect, remain silent.
And do you think it's the funeral that's the catalyst, but it's something that they probably should have shared when the person was still alive and said, "You're an asshole"?
I think a lot of times the people have already said that,
Yeah,
and
okay.
that's gone back and forth. I think it's more of a case that it doesn't matter what those people say or have not said. It's more about the person in the coffin now and what they've got to say. You know, they're the ones that are laying there and they've left a message now, and they're going back and saying, you know what, my family, you're a bunch of pricks. You're vultures. You did this, and this. Maybe that person, and I've spoken to some people that said, look, I couldn't confront my family like that because they would have ostracized me. They would have left me and I would have had nobody. And I'd say, well, now you're doing it from the afterlife. How do you feel about that? And they'd say, great. I say, you sure you feel really good about that? Because, you're going to leave a whirlwind of turmoil. And they'd say, they already really know. If they really, really, really loved me and knew me, they'd know already. And I go, okay, cool. So yeah, it wasn't much of a secret for those that truly knew him. It's a bit devastating for others, but that's where collateral damage comes in.
And I like the fact that your perspective is quite refreshing, in the fact that it always seems to come back to the deceased and the wishes of the deceased, which is a perspective that we don't really think of. Because, as you mentioned, we sometimes view the funeral and the ritual associated with the funeral for everyone else, not actually the deceased.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can go to any funeral today. You can go to any funeral at a church service, and the minister will always, always, always greet and hug and the people that are there, the living. 8 times out of 10, they forget the person's name in the casket, or they say something that's just not in line with what the person was, or that, and then they'll forget what they were about to say, or they'll read something different, and then they'll say, "Oh, let us pray," instead of the real truth about why they should be there, and it's for the person. So I see that time and time again. I find that very offensive in a way, because again, and I'll say this till the day I die, it's their funeral. It's not yours, it's theirs. If they've told you certain things that they want at their funeral, then do it. If the church refuses to do those things, then the church should not have their funeral then, and that happens a lot.
And do you think people are truly aware of the fact that they have the ability to make these choices when they are still alive? They can choose, what they do for their funeral. They can choose who speaks, and they can even write their own eulogy. Do you think people are really aware that they have these choices?
Well, they do now. And that's the beauty of what I've done. And I think I've got the world talking in a good way about funerals, and not only funerals, but about wakes, will readings, whatever it is. I've got them talking, and it's in a good way. And it's not, a lot of people don't speak about death because a couple of reasons. One of those reasons I found is, and I found this bizarre, but a lot of people think that if they speak about it, it's going to happen. So they just
Yeah.
don't talk about it. And I met a lady not so long ago that said that her mum and dad just passed away 4 weeks within each other. And she didn't know if to bury or cremate them because they never had the conversation. And I thought, wow.
That is such a responsibility for her to have on her shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. And what does she do? And I said to her, well, do you cremate one and bury one? And she goes, I really do not know. And I've got nobody to ask because no one ever knew. And I said, well, that's something that's now on your shoulders, and it's a shame, but I'm going to use that story to empower other people to talk, because that's what we need to do, is talk about it.
And obviously, you've been well and truly talking about it since, 2020. And, you're still here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere yet. I mean, I don't mind if I do either, because I've always said I envy the dead. I envy what they know, because they know what I don't. And that pisses me off. But at the same time, I love life too. I really do now. It's cool.
So tell me, who is Bill Edgar? Besides all of the hats that we've mentioned, what do you do on your days off?
When I'm with people, I'm the center of attention, but I love to be by myself. I love to be on my own. I have a hobby farm. I live on a hobby farm, and I love to be being here 90% of the time. I had this thing where I like animals more than I do people. I probably that's grown more since I've become the Coffin Confessor. But I got to say, the people I've met and have passed over now are lovely people, and they've really helped me to not look at the bad anymore in people. And that's something I did my whole life. I always looked in the bad first, and my wife used to say, "Look at the good in people." I go, "No, there is no good in people." Well, there is. I just didn't see it. I wasn't willing to open my eyes and have a look closer. I was too protective of myself and not letting anybody in, which is a detriment to my older age now, because now I'm thinking I don't have a friend in the world. And that's not because of anything else but me. And I don't want to carry out other people's baggage. I still know a lot of people, you know. The family I came from, I could see them all dead. It wouldn't worry me at all. The family I've created otherwise is, the breath and love of my life. So I'm just me. I'm no one special. I'm just Bill.
And that sort of protection of yourself and keeping people at distance, that's from what I've read of your books, is really based on that survivor mentality. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I had my childhood stolen when I was 7, and I never got it back. Never. And at the same time, I could say the same for my religion. I never had a religion. I was never allowed to, have a choosing of any of those. The childhood and religion was stolen from me. And everyone I met was a predator. No one helped. And those that I thought would help, that I confided in, were a predator. So it was just a terrible circumstance for me to be in, and, I've heard stories of horrific abuse, and there's some really, really terrible stories. And then I look at my own and I think, how is it a boy can end up with 4 abusers? I just don't, it just blew me away how that happened. I just can't fathom how 4 grown married men with families could do that. I mean, so there was no trust.
It says a lot about those men.
Well, it does. It does. And then you think to yourself, like, people have asked me about regrets and things in life, and what do I regret? And then I've got to go back to always saying my biggest regret in life was when I was a kid, I took it out on the gay community. I'd bash the gay community because that's what society said. Society said that they were gay, they were pedophiles, and that's what they did to children. Well, no, mine was married men. It wasn't the gay community. They had nothing to do with it. And that's a big regret that I had.
From that time, you seem to, and seems to be well documented, that aggression and that anger that came out and manifested itself in many ways. So you ended up in jail for a period of time. So when did that anger stop, Bill?
It didn't stop. I think it converted into a pain thing. I always, for some reason, I don't know why, but I used to like pain. I used to just enjoy pain because it made me feel alive, as though I was, something was happening. It was just a weird transition, and I could start an argument, a fight, and a really bad fight, and I'd stand there and get beaten to a pulp, and I'd laugh, and they'd hit me more because I was laughing. It's just like enjoying it, and they didn't understand. No one could understand. It's just a so the anger sort of transitioned into a pain thing where I enjoyed the pain, and the anger was sort of getting taken or replaced by that. I don't know why or how, but it did.
And to a degree, that seeking of pain hasn't stopped, has it, Bill? It's
Oh, no.
manifested it in a very strange way that you talk through in the book about visiting the dentist.
Yeah, so every now and then, I suppose it's like anybody that has or had an addiction or something, in their life, they revisit it, and most won't cross the line. They'll go, no, no, but I'm there. I mean, it's like giving up smoking. You think, oh, yeah, I could just have one. For me, sometimes I can be around a million people and still feel completely alone. And I have that feeling, and the pain thing is, as I say, a transition from the anger. But it came to me again not so long ago where I was so empty and confused, and and I had everything. I have my 6 grandchildren, had my wife, had my kids, had the farm, got everything I wanted and needed. And then all of a sudden I'm like, why do I want to do this? And then I thought the only way possible was, to feel a bit of pain and feel myself again. And it doesn't happen often or all the time, but it happened recently. And I went to the dentist, and and, I had all my old fillings drilled out and replaced in porcelain all in one hit without anaesthetic. She wasn't going to do it. She didn't want to do it. She thought it was going to be really, really painful, and, it could go against anything that she does. But I insisted that it get done and I'd be okay. And the pain was horrendous, not enjoyable, but it was horrendous, and it made me feel alive. And I just thought, there's a session that's over with. And I hope it, each time it diminishes further, who knows?
Because you did have, for want of a better word, an opportunity to see, I was going to use the word closure, but that's not really the right term. Perhaps you could explain that process when you went through the compensation claim and that horrific period of going to court and dealing with the school. And how did that feel when that was over, Bill?
Oh, yeah, incredible. I mean, look, again, like I go back to my childhood. I was 12 years old, living in government housing, dyslexic, with no ability or anything except sporting. I was very, very sporty, and I won a 5-year scholarship to the most prestigious school in Australia. The Southport School, TSS boys' school, that was renowned for just money, and it was dripping in wealth, and I get put in there, and all of a sudden I'm thrown to the lions. I didn't know. I had no idea, but it was pedophiles' playground. And I was just, thrown in there. And then, abused and subjected to the worst horrific abuse you could imagine at that school. And I buried it all, and I never spoke about it. And then it was a schoolmate who was a policeman and played for Australia. Peter Jackson everybody wanted to be Peter Jackson. He was the best football player. He played for the Broncos, played for Queensland, played for Australia. He was just an amazing man, funny, beautiful man. And he came out and said he was abused at the Southport School. And my heart dropped, and I thought, shit, I thought I was the only one. And if it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone. And then in 1997, he killed himself. And I thought, fuck. He was broken. I'm bent, but I'm not broken. I'm not going to break. So I took up the fight against the Southport School. And for 30 odd years, I'd fight the school, and I had so many lawyers and going back and forth, and the school called me a liar, and I was going to be sued, and I'd go into jail, and I was relentless. I just said, no, this is what happened, and this is who did it, and this is what I want and what I'm going to do. And for years and years. And then finally the church who owns the Southport School, the Anglican Church, came forward and they said, look, we can't find anything. We don't believe it happened. And for 2 years, back and forth with solicitors, then finally they come to the table and they said, yeah, well, we're going to offer a settlement. And at the time, I didn't want a fucking settlement. I wanted justice. I wanted these men held to account. But you're forced to take a settlement in Queensland. You have to take the settlement or you walk away with nothing. And the perpetrators, they get off. They're allowed to teach today. They're still walking free. And what really pissed me off the most is, why didn't the church and school stand by me? They only hired these men. They didn't know the men were pedophiles, surely. And if they did, well, they should burn in hell. But let's say they didn't, and they just hired these teachers, and those teachers were that bad and prolific at what they did in abuse. Why didn't the church and school stand by me and say, hey, listen, this is wrong. We're going to help you. We're going to stand up and we're going to put these people in jail. How dare they do that on our school grounds to our children? But they didn't. They just paid me out and let them keep teaching. So I was, horrified.
Do you continue to advocate today for other victims of child abuse?
Oh, absolutely. I started a Facebook page in 2012. It's called The Lost Boy of TSS. I've spoken to over 133 boys from that school that were abused in some way, sexually, physically, or mentally. And a lot of them have been compensated now. Again, none of us have got justice. But I leave the page open. It's something that the school wanted closed down, but I refused. I won't close it down. I'll leave it there for victims to come forward. I don't push victims to come forward, but I do say to them, look, if you want to stop being a victim and become a survivor, this is how you do it. And I try to guide them and show them how it's done and things like that. Unfortunately, lawyers are no better. The whole system sucks. It's just designed and set up for the average person to fail. It's too hard and complicated. So if I can guide them in a way that's a bit easier for them, I believe I've helped that way. So yeah, I try.
And do you mind sharing some of the things that you share with them to help them sort of survive and move through it?
Yeah, so well, a couple of things I advise and tell them to do is that it's always good to, because a lot of victims, they have a couple of things is a problem is that, the church and the school looked at a victim as being somebody that was a drug addict, alcoholic, in prison and just worthless, right? And they'll look at them and go, oh, that's sad. When they looked at me, they said, oh, he's too successful to be compensated. Obviously, the abuse didn't harm him that much. I was like, fuck off. I use the abuse to empower myself and make myself stronger so I could get back at you pricks. So, so I let people know that first off, they've got to keep a diary. They've got to diarize everything. Everything's in the memory. You've got to bring it back. You've got to put it in as much detail as you can. As sad and as shocking and as abusive as it was, you've got to recall every fact you can. And it doesn't matter if you can't remember the date or time, but you'll remember the day, whether it was an afternoon, a morning, a night time. You'll remember the area you were in, what the area looked like at the time. So you need all those specifics. So that way it helps you to able to substantiate where you were and what happened. And no one can discredit that with me because I'd say I was in the headmaster's office, and it looked like this and it had this picture on the wall and those sort of things. And they'd go, oh, no, it didn't. Then other boys would go, yes, it did. I was in that office too. It did have that. And they weren't abused or anything. They just say they were in that office and they remember seeing that picture or that statue or something. So it highlights those sort of things for a victim. They've got to bring all those things forward. So, they diarise everything. Everything's got to be brought out. I named and shamed my abusers. And I do that because I didn't care. And people say, what about their families? Fuck their families. I didn't care about them. I had to out these people because what they did to me. Now, if these people have got, daughters that are in their 30s or 40s and they're going on and they're having great careers, and then all of a sudden their dad's come out as a pedophile at the Southport school, well, so what? Well, I've got to keep that hidden because you've got a radio gig or something going on. And that's what happened to me. I was getting threatened by certain people that would say, that's my father. How dare you put that out there? And I go, well, your father's a pedophile and this is what he did. And they go, can't you just keep that, between you and the justice system? You don't have to air it everywhere. And I'm like, no, fuck you. No.
Because isn't that perpetrating the whole problem that's already around child sexual abuse anyway, is keeping it behind closed doors?
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's what I'd be saying to these people. Why would you want to hide that? And they go, I dealt with my father back then. Well, if you dealt with him back then, why is he still teaching? Why is it still going on? And why didn't you reach out to, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you do something? It's like, well, it wasn't my position or my abilities to do that. No, well, it is mine. And this is what I'm doing. So, yeah, I sort of let victims know they can name and shame. Not a problem. If they've got the facts and it truly happened, name and shame it. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Do it. So diary, name and shame, and always, as much as possible, reach out to not only people that may help you, like psychiatrists and things like that, but reach out to areas that you were in. Me, I was at a school, so I could reach out to other classmates and say, look, this sucks. I'm reaching out because this happened to me. I don't know if it happened to you or if it did or not, and they turn around, like a lot of times they turn around and say, fuck no, that didn't happen to me, but it may have happened to my brother. Can you have a chat to him? And then all of a sudden I found out that, the brother was being abused or somebody else. So it's a momentum thing. Once you've got the momentum behind you and you're telling the truth, nothing will stop you.
That seems to be also embedded in what you were saying earlier, Bill, with the fact that the story that you're hired to tell is from the person and the perspective of the deceased. And you're talking about your story. And so that's obviously very core to you, is being able to talk about your own personal story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never, being backward in coming forward when it comes to my story. I mean, my story might be horrific to a lot of people, and to myself, I look at it now as just a story. I won't allow it to control any part of my life. I used it to empower my life, but now you ask me how I felt after the process of going to court and getting the settlement and walking away. I wrote in my book that I honestly thought that I'd be high-fiving, running out and, it's all over, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was left so empty. The little boy inside me that I've been protecting and hiding and fighting for my whole life said it's time to go. And that was just like, holy shit. And I was walking back to the hotel from mediation and I'm thinking, fuck, I've got to get off the street. I'm having an attack. I didn't know what was going on. So I had to run into a clothes shop and just go into the change room and sit there. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? I should be happy, but I wasn't. I was, but I wasn't, if you know what I mean. I was empty. I couldn't believe that it was finally finished all those years. The school and the church came forward and without saying, you're not a liar. You're not a liar. It's just, it was ridiculous. Yeah, crazy.
And so what gets you up in the morning now, Bill?
What gets me up in the morning? You know what? Now, I got to be honest with you now. I've always said that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got, right? So I look at things differently now. In my whole life, everything's changed since I've become the Coffin Confessor. I look at life differently. I look at it as though, I'm not going to live and then die. I'm going to die living. I'm very healthy. I like to keep my health. I like to make sure that, like I'm 56 and I'm thinking, fuck, I'm a Gen X. Probably you are too. So we were born 30 and we'll die 30. Right?
Yeah.
So really, there's no real, that it's just a number for us. But I look at people my age and I think to myself, you got to keep moving. You can't stop. You just got to keep moving, because whilst 56 to me isn't very old and I'm fit and healthy, to some it is, and I think, well, I want to be 66, 76, 86, but I want my health, So that's what gets me up in the morning is to be able to get up and enjoy life. And it might even just be staying on the farm. Lara's, with me all the time. She does a lot of things with her friends and that, but she's here, 90% of the time. And we love gardening. We love the horses. We love just doing stuff together. I don't know. I think that's what gets me going and living life.
And you talk about a very vulnerable time when it wasn't something that happened to you, but it was what happened to Lara in relation to an accident that was totally unforeseen.
Mm.
How has that impacted on how you value life and your outlook?
Oh, yeah. I nearly lost her twice, yeah. The horse accident, and she was in hospital for a long time and she's learnt to walk again, and she was crushed severely by the horse. And then she comes home and then has a heart attack. And I nearly lose her again, and it was just phenomenal. It was just the scariest thought. It's losing her. And I think what hit me most was not the thought, I'm going to be on my own or, woe is me. It was, holy shit, she's got so much life to live. Lara's not like that, and she proved it anyway. She's literally riding her horse right now outside. And it's taken, the accident was 2021, and it's taken all this time for her to get back on the horse, and she's back on there and she's riding around our property, just walking, but she's back on the horse. And I couldn't be more proud of her. Like that shows me that, women, I've always said, women are the strongest species in the world. They really are. They push out babies. Men would just have a heart attack and die, even at the thought of it, and the pain barrier that you guys have. I thought, I need pain sometimes, because I look at her and I just go, wow, incredible.
And tell me, what has being the Coffin Confessor taught you about life?
Yeah, not only to live, but prepare. I didn't realize that I wasn't prepared for death, not my own death or the death of a loved one. Doesn't mean I'm not going to mourn and get upset and probably break down, but I'm more prepared now. I'm prepared to know that it is inevitable. We are going. It doesn't matter what you do, we're going. Nothing's going to stop it. It's coming. Every person on the planet has a skeleton in the closet. You know, whether you want to let it out or not, you let it out. Whether you want to clean your closet, that's up to you. I suggest people do. I think it'd be good in life to get rid of all the shit in your life and the people as well. A lot of people have friends that are not really friends, you know, and you don't need all that to tie you down. Just move on and start something different and new. Even if it's going for a walk they haven't done for ages, you just do it, you know. For me, it's preparation in knowing that we're all going to die and it's just part of life. And once you accept that, and if it happens, you go, well, you know what? It was always going to happen. It's always going to happen. And it's a reality. And I've learned that. And it's come to me now that, you know, as sad as it's going to be and emotional, everything else, it's part of life, you know. And I believe the meaning of life is to avoid death for as long as you can.
And tell me, you have embarked at one stage while you're on the farm into another side hustle that you had about an accommodation business.
Yeah, that came and went really quick. It was an amazing sort of idea. I had this idea where people just wanted to meet the Coffin Confessor, you know, and sit and talk and read books and enjoy, you know, a beer or whatever over a campfire. And I thought, hey, that could be a great idea. But I'll go one step further. And I brought coffins onto the farm and I had coffin camping. And all the journalists wanted to know about it and came in and stayed and had a great time coming and staying. And a few people came and stayed. But I did it at my place, and I shouldn't have done it at my place because every second car that went past stopped and tried to jump the fence and take photos and videos and yelling out, Coffin Confessor, we love you, and in the middle of the night. And it was just like, oh, my God. So it was one of those things that it came and went really quick. Great concept, great idea. A guy come along and he said, look, I love the idea. I have a property in the Blue Mountains, so I want to do it out there, and I've got caves and all this. And I said, yeah, cool. He says, I want to buy the concept off you. I said, yeah, not a problem. Not a problem at all. You can have it. So, yeah, that's where it went. And I believe he's doing it. And it's cool, niche, different idea. But for me, it wasn't, I shouldn't have done it at my place. But, hey, we all live and learn.
Yep, we certainly learned from that one. Now tell me, I've even looked up on the internet and there's coffinconfessor.com. Now that's not you. How many people are trying to emanate you around the world?
Probably thousands. But I also get thousands of resumes from around the world. And those people that are trying to start it up, they always come back to me and they go, look, I need help. How can we do this? I'm not getting any clients, or they're not trusting me. And I'm like, well, you know what? If they're not trusting you, I can't trust you. So I don't know. It takes a certain type of person to do it. Not everyone can do it. It's a job that's, you know, it's definitely not for the faint of heart or those that fear. I mean, it's not easy just standing up in the middle of a funeral and saying, excuse me, my name's Bill Edgar, sit down, shut up or fuck off. I am the Coffin Confessor. The man in the coffin's got something to say and this is what it is. And then all of a sudden these people will go, yeah, well, I can do that. I can say it. And we had a lady in New Zealand, they come and saw me and I couldn't take her job on. And she says, oh, my nephew's going to be the next Coffin Confessor then because he's going to do it. 2 weeks later, I get the email off her saying, oh, my nephew backed out. He couldn't do it. And I said, yeah. I said, it's not for everyone. It's a unique job. It's different.
And from my understanding, you will take on a job, you will substantiate the claims of that person, and then it may be years before you have to stand up at their funeral.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, people will pay a deposit and it'll be held in a trust account and it'll just sit there. And and I've even had some people in 2019 who've come to me in 2023 and say, oh, look, I've had a change of heart. You know, not a problem. There's your refund. You know, live life, enjoy life and do what you're going to do. And they'll go, look, if I think of something different, can I? Yeah, of course. I mean, my job's description's changed so much, from crashing funerals to placing items in coffins to pinpricking bodies to, you know, going all over the world doing what I'm doing, and now doing the afterlife delivery service is just, you know, it's incredible, unique, and it's humbling.
Let's talk about the afterlife delivery service. What does that involve?
So people have engaged me now to put together either a basket of their choosing, certain items, and deliver it either on a birthday, anniversary, or special occasion after the person's died. Two instances. It was a lady that had passed 7 months ago and wanted it delivered to her husband with a special trip, which was a world trip that they'd been saving on going, and they couldn't go because she was terminally ill. But she saved enough money to buy that trip for him so he could now go. And it's beautiful delivering that. I get some requests that you just think, seriously, that's what you want delivered? And this person wanted a car delivered, right, to a person that he really liked, and the person always admired his car. And this is only a recent event where the person, I'd knock on their door and I'd say, "G'day, Jamie, how are you?" And I'm Bill, the Coffin Confessor. Remember Ted you used to live next door to for 15 years and you admired his XB coupe? Yeah, well, this parked in your driveway, mate. It's yours.
Oh, wow.
So things like that, yeah, pretty cool.
Oh, and being a car man yourself,
Oh, yeah.
that would have been great.
Oh, love doing it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you read out, car thief at the start, I stole my first car. I was 14. Yeah, I was 14 when I stole my first car. That's how I learned to drive. It was a manual, and I stole it from a service station. And I remember bunny hopping all the way down Surfers Paradise Boulevard.
You really should have checked.
I should have, and I had a love for cars and fast cars. And, I had I had hidden talents that were so bizarre and stupid and so wrong. And it was until later on in life that I ended up working hard and saving and buying those cars. And even today I've got a nice car, and it's just something I've always had and wanted. And if you want it bad enough, and you'll get it.
Tell me, what does you perceive to be the biggest misconception about the role of work you do?
They forget that I'm only the messenger. I'm there on behalf of their loved one laying in the coffin. It's not my story. It's theirs. Don't think I've just seen the funeral and I'm just going to crash it, right? I don't just rock up to anybody's funeral. I'm there on behalf of your loved one. It's their funeral. It's not my words. I read exactly what they've written. I place it back in the envelope, put it on the coffin, and I leave. I have no idea I don't know if it continues or not after the bomb shells. And I really don't care because I've done my job. I've fulfilled my job. My role as the Coffin Confessor is there for my client only, first and foremost. But it's not me. I'm just the messenger. So a lot of people will think, "Oh, why would you put words in their mouth?" I don't. I don't put words in their mouth. I just sit with them. I hear their story. I video their story. I have a contract with them, and then I release it at the funeral.
And tell me, you briefly alluded to one particular contract you had with a client. You mentioned the words "bin cushion" earlier. You probably should expand on that one for our audience.
Yeah, so, and it's not the first time either. I mean, I had this, everybody's has a fear of something, and people have claustrophobia, being in small, tight places, it's just something people hate. This first client, he was petrified of being cremated alive. It's something that he dreamt about, had nightmares about, always thought that he was going to be in a glass coffin and he was laying there and he could see the mourners. But at the time, the priest said, "Let us pray." So everybody had their heads bowed when he's trying to move and get the attention of everyone. And that was one of his crazy dreams. And he said, "Look, I need you to come to the viewing and pinprick my body to make sure I'm deceased." And I said, "Are you sure that's what you want?" He said, "Yeah, that's what I want. I need you to do that." And I did. I fulfilled the obligation. I had to film it and everything else. And I had to make sure that I'd get a couple of minutes private viewing, because I wasn't going to just go in and start pinpricking the body in front of the family and friends.
Probably wise.
Yeah, but it's happened a couple of times now.
And has there been a request that surprised you, or, it's been quite unexpected?
Oh, the request that really gets me, and it got me the first time ever, was that to be a suicide note when the lady, and you do everything you can to talk to them and ask them to get help, and you advise and you offer them help, but it didn't matter. She was going to do what she was going to do, and she did do what she did. Said she was going to do. But she wanted me to be her suicide note, living suicide note. And I found that a little confronting at first. And then I thought, I don't know if I could do that. And then I thought, well, I am the Coffin Confessor. That's what I do. It's exactly what I do. I'm just confessing someone's secret, and that's what she wants. That's what she got. But it was confronting at the start.
And how was it received by the loved ones that you gave the message to?
They were pricks. The family were absolute pricks. I couldn't believe she had a family like that. Like, you know, her brother yells out, "Oh, she should have done it a long time ago." And her father was more devastated about his wife's death 10 years earlier and said that he didn't even care. It's just like, fuck, this lady had taken her own life because of issues that she had. And I could see the main issue she had was family, so I sort of could understand a little of why she went the way she did.
And how, especially in those circumstances that are quite confronting, how do you, I suppose, function and does it impact your life? Like, how do you do self care so you don't bring it home?
I don't think I do anymore. I don't hold on to anything. And like I say, all the trauma I've been through has probably made me able to do what I do. All the abuse I suffered and everything else, and I don't hold on to any of that. So therefore, I don't hold on to anybody else's. I just go in, do the job, and I walk away. Sometimes I might, sit by myself or be somewhere and I'll just have a little reflection or think about those people. Or when, I'm interviewed like this and I'm thinking of the lady now who took her life, and I think to myself, what was saddest for me is that her family, is just a terrible part. And I think to myself, I'm so glad that I've got a family that Lara and I have created, that we're so close that that would never happen. We won't allow that to happen. We communicate, we love each other dearly. And that's a big problem with a lot of families these days. They don't communicate. We see that with a lot of couples. You see a lot of couples that they go, "Oh yeah, we talk all the time, but we haven't had sex in 12 months. Well, obviously you don't talk, so, it's just one of those things, yeah. So I reflect on those things, but a very, very short moment. I don't let them live within my head.
And have you done anything to prepare for your own death?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm not having a funeral. I'm just having cremation, thrown in the ocean, bottle of port, followed by a bottle of port, and the family does what they're going to do, which is probably not grieve as much, because I wrote about it in the second book about how they came after they played a prank on me about being dead, which was really cool. I enjoyed it, actually, after I got over the initial what the fuck's going on. But yeah, I'm looking at doing something special, and yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm exploring holograms, which is really cool. But the problem with that is, and this is something I didn't really think about at the time, but now I'm thinking after the coffin camping idea, with a hologram, you're there forever. And so you don't change, but the people around you always change.
Yeah.
But you don't. You're always there the same. Is that what you want? Is that what you want to leave? And then I think, well, if I was to die today, the family can Google me anywhere. I'm always there. So I'm always speaking or doing something. So, and again, I don't change. I'm always there, so I don't know. Yeah, but I'm looking into it.
You and ABBA left as holograms for eternity.
Imagine that. I don't know. It's an idea, but...
Do you have a will? Do you have an advance care directive? Have you had these conversations?
I have had the conversations. I have a trust. And this is something I try to tell a lot of people to do. You've got to have a family trust. Everything's in the family trust. And that way it eliminates a lot of bullshit. Right? It's a family trust. Everything goes to the family. There's no worries there. That's how I've always done it that way. I hate the idea of people contesting wills. It happens so often. And I've investigated a lot of these claims, and I've sat with people that contest them, and I can understand they're contesting it because, someone else is getting more. No one gets more than a lawyer. Okay, no one. So, and I hate the blood-sucking parasitic lawyers. I really do. But they do. They make a lot of money out of, wills and estates, and it's something that also I believe needs to be overhauled. I don't like the system, how it works. I find it betrayal of those that have gone, especially when they've insisted on what they want. And when it's not done, that's a huge betrayal. So I really hope there's a fucking afterlife and it comes back on all these people that have done the dirty on them. I really do.
Given all your experience and what you've seen about humanity, what advice do you give to people about their unresolved issues or secrets?
Oh, give me a call. I'd be inundated. No, you know what? It's like I said before. It's it's a skeleton in the closet. It's an issue they have. Either resolve it now, or take it to the grave, or let it out. It's truly up to them. Me personally, I like to resolve any issues I've got. I do that because I'm capable and able to. But I understand there's a lot of people that aren't and can't do that. But that's unfortunate. But that's where I guess the Coffin Confessor concept and idea has born and sprung to life, because I didn't realize there were so many people that, and it's not because also a lot of people are fearful of opening up those cans of worms, but a lot of people on their deathbed, they're not visited by the people that hurt them. They're not visited by the people that, just love them. They're visited by the people that truly love them. So they don't see those people on their deathbed, so, I can understand sometimes they're like, hey, listen, I want to leave a message of love or hate or disrespect or concern or whatever it is. But that's up to them. That's fine, as long as I get to investigate their claims first and I know that, that it's true, and I'm not going to destroy a family through bullshit. I've got to make sure I'm 100% accurate, and that's why I don't take every job on. I just can't.
And then that leads me to my last question for you, Bill. Because there is only one Bill Edgar who has been formed by your past, what is the future of Coffin Confessor?
Yeah, I had a big issue. I've had thousands of people reach out to me, but I've had a number of people in the United States, England, all over the world wanting me to franchise and do certain things with it. My issue, and it comes back to my morals and integrity, is that it is so easy to take advantage of the dying and the deceased, because you get paid up front and nobody knows except you and them. So how do they know, or the job's being done? So that's an issue I have. So it's possible it will die with me, or I might create a system that's a little bit harder for those to manipulate it. And I just haven't got that yet. So that's why I haven't allowed it to spawn and go into a big business all over the world. I'll keep doing it by myself, and I'll hold the integrity and the truth and everything with it for as long as I can. Because like I say, it's just too easy to manipulate.
Well, I look forward to seeing how that develops, Bill, and I can't thank you enough for your time today.
No, thank you for having me, and it's been great. Really enjoyed it.
Don't be caught dead forgetting to subscribe. And here are some more videos we know you'll love.